Yo, what is going on guys, Karma here and welcome back to another Borderlands 3 video. With the latest patch, Gearbox added the Guardian Takedown, and let me tell you, it's actually pretty difficult, especially if you don't have the right gear. So in this video, I bring you guys the top 10 weapons to use at the Guardian Takedown right now. Later this week, enemies at the Takedown will actually receive a nerf to their health, so they will be easier. So technically, if these weapons on this list are really good right now, when the update actually gets here, they will absolutely shred. So before I get into this list, I wanted to let you guys know that we are on our way to 20,000 subscribers. So if you find this video helpful or enjoyable, a like rating will be appreciated, and if you want to subscribe for more content like this, that'll be awesome as well. So starting off with the number 10 spot, we have the Unseen Threat. This is a sniper from DLC 2, and it drops from a Mach, which is a rare spawn enemy. This is a very powerful sniper rifle that benefits from multiple elements and just destroys single target enemies with critical hits. The drawback, of course, is getting those critical hits. This takedown can get very hectic, but if you manage to use it properly, it will absolutely put in work. It is also good for mobbing with certain builds. Amara with Ties That Bind, for example, can put in a lot of work. The anointment that I recommend you take for this weapon is the 100% elemental on next 2 magazines, as well as the 200% while action skill is active anoint. Moving on to the number 9 spot, we have the Anarchy. This is another DLC 2 weapon, and it is actually a world drop within the DLC. The Anarchy is a shotgun that deals a ton of damage if you get full stacks. In order to get full stacks, you need to get automatic reloads. So as long as you don't do any manual reloads, this weapon should be able to stack up insane amounts of damage. If you have used it before, you know what it's capable of. You will be able to one-shot basically any enemy in the game. The drawback with this weapon though is that if you go down, you will lose all the stacks. So make sure you have a different weapon ready in case you go into fight for your life. Next up, we have the number 8 spot, and it belongs to the Hyperfocused. This weapon drops from the power troopers at the Atlas HQ on Promethea. This SMG was extremely good back in Mayhem 4. Then, with the release of Mayhem 2.0, it started losing its popularity, but it still does really good against mobs. Keep in mind, this weapon thrives when you use multiple elements, so make sure you have 50% elemental anointments on your shield and grenade, and also make sure to use the 100% elemental anointment on next 2 magazines. I was using it mainly for mobbing sections, and absolutely destroys the annoying guardians that are flying around. Sometimes even with no mobs around, it will still destroy those guardians. Moving on to the number 7 spot, we have the Sandhog. This weapon drops from Katagawa Jr. over at the Atlas HQ on Promethea. This sniper is just a beast. Recently, it got a small nerf, but it still puts in work. I recommend you use this weapon solely for the bosses because you can run out of ammo, so make sure to take something to regen your ammo because you're gonna burn through it very quickly. The anointments that I recommend to use are the 200% while action skill is active anoint and the 100% elemental on next 2 magazines. Next up, we have the number 6 spot, and this belongs to the Chaosin. This SMG drops from Captain Trant over at Athenas. Recently, this weapon actually got a nerf, and a lot of people seem to think that it is not worth it anymore. But it is still actually a very decent option for this takedown. It is a really good mobbing weapon and does great against single target enemies. The best anointments for this weapon are definitely the 100% elemental on next 2 magazines and the 150% radiation anoint. Make sure you try to get splash rolls on your class mods and artifact, as it really makes this weapon viable. So if you don't have any increases to your splash damage on your build, I will stay away from using this weapon. Moving on to the number 5 spot, we have the OPQ System. This weapon was available at the Revenge of the Cartel's seasonal event. It was one of the best weapons in Mayhem 10 before the reduction of health to shield and armor, and it has not been nerfed. So this weapon is definitely one you want to use for this takedown. The anointments that I recommend for this weapon are the 100% elemental on next 2 magazines and the 150% radiation anoint. Unfortunately, I only farmed for the 300% over 90 anointment, and as we all know, that got nerfed. But if you were lucky enough to have farmed one of these anointments that I mentioned, then make sure to use it. Moving on to the number 4 spot, we have the Reflux. This weapon drops from Genevieve over at the Voracious Canopy on Eden 6, and this weapon is basically the better version of the Brainstormer. It does the exact same thing, it chains enemies, and it does twice the damage, but it is corrosive. The Guardians of this takedown have armor, so since corrosive is strong against armor, it can really help you out. I recommend you take the 100% shock on next to magazines anointment, as this will allow you to basically have a Reflux and a Brainstormer in one weapon. And when you're at the crystal step, this will absolutely shred all the Guardians, so make sure to use this weapon. Moving on to the number 3 spot, we have the Recursion. This weapon drops from General Trant over at Desolation's Edge on Necrotafeo. It is a shotgun that needs no introduction. We all know what it can do to mobs. It's actually my go-to with the Mara, but it destroys on any character. It is just a general mobbing weapon, so don't try to use it on enemies if they're alone or they're too far apart. They really need to be bunched up together in order for this to actually work properly. This weapon, just like the Hyperfocused, will thrive if you're using multiple elements in your build, so make sure to have a shield and a grenade with the 50% elemental anointment, and also take the 100% elemental on next to magazines anoint for the weapon. Now, all you need to do is activate your action skill, wait for action skill end, and just see how it melts all those annoying mobs. Moving on to the number 2 spot, we have the Monarch. This weapon is probably the best weapon you can use on single targets on this raid. It absolutely shreds. Everyone that I have seen beat this takedown at this difficulty has been using the Monarch. It is also a great mobbing weapon if you're using Ties That Bind on Amara. This weapon drops from Kilovolt over at Electricity and can drop with 4 pellets or 8 pellets. I obviously recommend you get an 8 pellet one, but it is not required. I've only been using a 4 pellet Monarch and it is an absolute beast. The anointment that I recommend for this weapon is the consecutive hits anointment. You can also take a 100% elemental on next to magazines if you'd like. Make sure to switch it to bipod mode as well, as you will do double the damage, and don't forget to make sure to proc your anointments if you need to. The Monarch is what everyone should be taking for this takedown 10 out of 10 times. So far we have gone over 9 weapons that I recommend for the Guardian takedown, and before we get into the number 1 spot, I wanted to give a few honorable mentions which go out to the Lob, the Plague Bearer, the Cutsman, the Skullmasher, and the Maggie. All these weapons are doing a very decent job against the enemies at the raid at the moment. They don't destroy them nearly as much as the other weapons on my list, but they are still very viable, especially with the lowering of the health of these enemies coming later this week. Believe me, once this update gets here, these weapons will also be insane. And one more very special shout out goes out to the Yellow Cake. Recently it received a huge nerf, but it still destroys nearly every enemy in one shot if used properly. Incredible launcher, and you should definitely give it a try in this takedown. And now for the number 1 spot on this list, we have the Backburner. Oh boy, this weapon is incredible. It is a launcher which drops from Agonizer 9000 over at the Guts of Carnivora on Pandora. As of now, the best weapon in the entire game when it comes to bosses. It is also very good against mobs, although I wouldn't recommend you use it at that. Personally, I could not beat the takedown until I farmed for this weapon. You're going to want to farm for a corrosive or cryo one with the 200% splash anoint. This is to deal with the armor of the bosses in the takedown. Of course, you can use other weapons for this, but they will not perform better than the Backburner. I strongly recommend you farm for this weapon because it's going to be a lifesaver when it comes to this takedown. This is, in my opinion, the single most important weapon that you need to take to this takedown. But anyways, that's going to do it for the top 10 weapons to use at the Guardian takedown. All of these are incredible right now, and as you know, currently the takedown is extremely difficult. So if these weapons are doing well right now, imagine how good they're gonna be when the enemy's health gets nerfed. They're gonna be absolutely insane, but I digress. If you found this video helpful or informative in any way, a like rating is always appreciated, and if you want to subscribe for more content like this, that'll be awesome as well. Hope y'all have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.